Hi, it's Louisa Dahl. And welcome to the Interactive Minds podcast, where I talk with passionate marketers, innovators, and digital leaders about their specific recipes for success. In today's show, I interview Andrew Collings talking about rational and emotional marketing. Here's 3 things you're going to learn. 1, why you can't market to everyone. 2, how to bring emotional messaging into your marketing. And 3, using surveys to get market feedback. Let's get into it. Today on the show, I have senior marketer Andrew Collings, who was most recently in the role of National Marketing Manager at Exclusive Tyre Distributors. Andrew has over 15 years leading nationally recognised brands, and it's great to have him on the show today. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi, Louisa. It's great to be here. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Now, Andrew, you've had a lot of varied roles in industries from automotive and beverages through to lottery and retail. What's been a career highlight for you?
Probably my time at Lion Nathan working on a really massive campaign. We loaded some beer on a boat, took it to London and set the pub up there to sell beer to people in London, as well as beer back in New Zealand as well. So it was a massive campaign, big budget, sort of over 3 months. A year's worth of dollars put into that campaign. This was before social media as well. So, we were building websites and trackers and aligning a lot with TV shows as well to build the awareness of the campaign.
Awesome. Sounds like a pretty fun campaign to have worked on.
Yeah, definitely fun. And I guess that's why it was a highlight.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of campaign would work nowadays?
Well, I think it could be made more exciting these days with social media, with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So you could really make it a lot more interactive than what we were able to do sort of 15 years ago now.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so for those people listening who might not know you, if you had to describe your approach to marketing and what kind of roles you do in a couple of sentences, what would you say?
Yeah, I think I'm very analytical by nature. So I like the research. I'm very structured around segmentation, understanding what markets we're talking to, and then sort of aligning creative and different advertising channels to those markets as well. So I've relied a lot on research, relied a lot on sort of the traditional insight methods as well to hopefully come up with successful campaigns.
Yeah. So tell us about your most recent role at Exclusive Tyre Distributors.
Yeah, so while Exclusive Tyre Distributors doesn't sound very exciting, or tyres don't sound very exciting, I come into the role 10 years ago not knowing anything about a tyre, and they're definitely not round, black rubber things, as I found out in my time in that role. I was the national marketing manager for brands Cooper Tyres, well known to four-wheel drivers, as well as Mickey Thompson tyres as well. The business that owns Cooper and Mickey Thompson in Australia, National Tyre and Wheel Limited, recently listed on the stock exchange, which was very exciting. But my main role there was sort of to lead the strategic planning of the marketing team, bring brand managers together, strategies together, and take them to market, not only from a national level, but also aligning with the different channels, the different retailers that sold the brands as well.
Yeah, right. And what would you say were some of your biggest accomplishments in the role?
I think a couple of the bigger accomplishments would be moving the brand away from sort of where it had been positioned when it was brought into Australia to traditional four-wheel drive drivers, and sort of segmenting and targeting SUV drivers and extending the range and bringing car tyres in from America as well. So really had to understand the different markets, create different content, and then use different channels to talk to those different segments. So that was definitely a highlight. I guess the other highlight has been actually structuring a team around the digital revolution, sort of with the SEO and the SEM activity becoming more prevalent. The team sort of had to change over time as well. So sort of I was instrumental in upskilling and changing some of the skills and bringing some more people on board as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess over that 10-year period, a lot of things have changed in marketing, haven't they?
Oh, and it's happened very, very quickly as well. So, any marketing person sort of really needs to be upskilling themselves nearly every 6 months or at least upskilling via reading some of the latest techniques and strategies and keeping their eye on what other brands, businesses are doing in the market as well.
Yeah. What are your favourite ways to keep your skills fresh?
I'd like to attend sort of summits. I was attending the Umbrella Automotive Summit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great when you can go to something, even though we can't at the moment because of what's going on.
Yes.
Networking is very important. Keeping a big network of people like-minded but can bring different opinions. And also, I guess they sort of become mentors by default as well. You can pick up the phone and talk to them and just, run things past them. But, reading, I do a lot of reading. And I don't read books from 10 years ago. I read books that were sort of published 6 months ago, as well as lots of articles. McKinsey, you can use that. Gartner, there's some really good international, and it's all free as well. But it's great to have those contacts.
Some good sources there. Excellent. So I guess when everyone, moves through their career, we have certain roles that teach us different things along the way. What were some of your marketing learnings from this role that you had at Exclusive Tyre Distributors?
I was lucky. The owner of the business, the private owner before it publicly listed, he had a really good marketing mind. So I was able to learn a lot from him. Also, there's some great books out there. And I guess what those books talk about, Al Rise is the author of one of them. It talks about you can't market to everyone. So you've got to find a position, then you've got to sort of work out what appeals to that target market. And, if possible, actually create your own category, as well and become the owner of that category. And the job is to sort of keep your brand top of mind. And there's different ways of doing that. But not targeting everyone, very important rule that I've sort of followed, and create campaigns that talk to sort of smaller markets. People, might often call that niche, but niche really just means small markets or smaller markets. That doesn't mean you don't appeal to other people, and they'll still buy your brand because, the 40-year-old wants to feel 18 or vice versa.
Yep.
So that's probably the key thing from a marketing point of view is, you can't appeal to everyone.
Can you give us an example of how you applied that?
I guess to the four-wheel drive market in Australia, we had to target both Cooper tyres and Mickey Thompson tyres. So we've appealed Cooper to an older demographic and appealed Mickey Thompson to a younger demographic. And if you think of sort of other brands, we did some similar strategies to sort of what Red Bull has done with the Mickey Thompson brand. So we used a lot of action content. Think of four-wheel drives with big lift kits, going up big hills, splashing around in mud. Yep. Whereas with Cooper tyres, we appealed to a lot more older demographic, a lot more stationary four-wheel drive vehicles. Not as many sort of lift kits and bars attached to vehicles, big caravans on the back, appealing to the grey nomad. And also with Cooper, we used a lot more rationale marketing as well. So, we would put out there a claim that these tyres would last at least twice as long as the competitor tyres, and then we'd back that up with research testing and communicate that very hard as well.
Okay. And that's something we're going to delve into a little bit more today, talking about rational versus emotional messaging, and how you've connected with customers in different ways. Can you tell us why you're passionate about this concept and explain it to us?
Yeah, and I guess it probably goes back again to my analytical mind and sort of the psychology around marketing. So, rational and emotional marketing, different advertising strategies is how do we appeal, how do we build brands to consumers. And I think from what I've seen in my career so far is a big shift away from rational to more sort of emotional marketing. But if you can sort of find a good balance of both, it really taps into sort of both sides of the brain, because that's sort of where it becomes interesting. Without getting too technical, the left side of the brain thinks rationally and the right side of the brain sort of thinks emotionally. So you get two chances to build your brand, build awareness if you can tap into sort of both those sides of the brand, and then try and link it to research and that sort of segmentation I mentioned earlier around your customer, and what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what makes them frustrated, as well as what also. So the emotional is the feeling side of it, and the rational is the thinking side of it, and sort of the techniques you use, the visuals you use, the content you use to appeal to both those sort of advertising strategies as well.
Yeah. Would you say that in the past, brands have typically taken a rational approach to marketing and that's now evolving more to emotional, or is that not necessarily the case?
No, I definitely think we were a lot more rational in our advertising and our promotional efforts. Particularly what I've seen, and I guess it depends on the brand, depends on the product. The more sort of technical the product, the more rational you have to be. You think of an iPhone or a Samsung. They talk about the camera zooms in 10 times better. That's sort of the rational, appealing to the usefulness of the camera. Whereas my experience with the beer brands was very hard to position your brand. So you sort of positioned it more on the emotional feelings and knowing your audience. So it might be a low carb beer when that was a fashion, and all your advertising would be fit people out there running around, and then at the end of the day enjoying low carb beer as well. And those people would watch those ads and think, yeah, that's me. And hopefully increases your sales, or you create a new category, for example, as well.
Yeah. I imagine having that emotional side covered means that need to know your customer really well. How do you approach that, and what are your tips to get to that emotional connection?
And that's a really good point. And what I've used in the past, and I've had access to some good budget and some good research. And without research, you can't really sort of tap into your target markets and how they're going to feel or how they're going to think. So I've used a lot of research in developing campaigns. So I can appeal to the emotions of the target market, or I can appeal to what is useful with the product's technical information as well. Because the whole idea of this is, when you get a good campaign, you're creating these powerful memory structures, and there's a lot of research going on around this at the moment. And you create those powerful memories, and then that helps the consumer remember your brand and helps you as a marketing manager sort of keep it top of mind as well.
Yeah. When you do the research, what types of things are you looking for?
Looking at sort of the attitudinal stuff. So whether a brand, when you buy it, makes you happy, makes you sad, whether you feel frustrated when you buy it, because these are all things you can tap into. If someone buys a brand and it makes them feel happy, you can do a bit more of the emotional stuff. Whereas if someone buys a brand and they buy it, but it makes them frustrated afterwards, for example, tyres, no one likes to buy tyres. You can put the rationale into your advertising, and that helps actually sort of eliminate a bit of that post-purchase dissonance, because what we do know through research is that people buy on emotion and then they rationalise it later. So they go and buy something and hopefully it makes them feel good. Then they start to feel, oh, maybe I'm a little bit unhappy about this. And then they go and they look for reasons to justify that purchase. And that's sort of where the rationale stuff can come into play. And there's other strategies you can use to tackle that as well.
Yeah. How do you choose when you're looking to implement a campaign what the right balance of emotional versus rational is?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And it sort of goes back to the research and having a clear objective as to who your target market is, and why you're targeting them, and sort of what the insight is and what the frustration is that you might be trying to take away from them as well. So relying on that research is really important to help determine whether you're going to do a bit more of an emotional campaign or a rational campaign. And I think just going back to Cooper and Mickey Thompson tyres as well, we could be a lot more emotional with Mickey Thompson as we targeted a younger market and sort of sell it on the excitement of four-wheel driving. Whereas on the rational side with Cooper tyres, it was sort of justifying the value and also positioning it as a premium brand where we wanted people to pay top dollar for it and deliver, a good margin back to the reseller as well as the distributor as well.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen when you're trying to implement this type of approach?
Well, I think getting the mix right. Sometimes you can miss the mark, and you don't see the increase through the sales, which sort of ideally is what you're trying to do in the end. Also, you're not moving sort of some of that brand tracking information, the awareness, the likability scores, etc. So, but yeah, if you don't get it right, or you can bore people if you're too rational, and the target market you're going for sort of enjoys a bit more of an emotional message. And I think this is one of the things to learn as we've moved into the digital revolution with the Instagram and the quick 10-second videos and even TikTok now, and starting to see how people are advertising through that, sort of highly emotional. And so, if you don't know who your market is, and you make something, very boring, you don't want to turn on TikTok and here's a graph of something that's going to prove that you're 30% better than someone else.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't match the channel as well. So, you got to put all these things in a pot, stir it up, and hopefully what you bake at the other end is a successful campaign.
What do you do if you are having some of those things that you mentioned and not seeing those results or not getting what you expect out of the campaign? What would your next step be? Yeah,
and I guess I've sort of come from a test change background as well. So keeping an eye on some of the important scores and having some very clear KPIs and objectives from the start. So if it's not working and you feel like you're putting some budget down the drain, you can go back to the drawing board or change, or just get a few of your target market into a room and do just a focus group. And it doesn't have to be following any kind of process. It can be casual, just to find maybe one or two things that need a little tweak.
Yep.
And change it up and sort of put it back out there as well.
Yeah, great advice. We've spoken a lot about research and your use of research. How often would you typically be doing research, maybe in your previous role?
Yeah, tyres, obviously, because it's a low interest category as well. Even though we were able to create a brand in a high interest category, because around a campfire, people are always talking about the tyres.
Yeah.
We would do a big yearly brand survey where we'd look at awareness, make sure that was increasing and where our competitors were at as well. And then probably every 3 months. And I mean, you can do it again just through your SurveyMonkey, and if you're building a database, you can you can look at satisfaction scores and get a bit of research. You don't want to bombard someone when they buy a set of tyres with a 2-hour survey, but you can ask them one or two questions that over time just gives you some information and allows you to backtrack and keep an eye on the KPIs of your campaigns.
Yeah, definitely. When we're talking about KPIs, what types of measures do you use for KPIs for yourself?
Yeah, and I guess the traditional sort of brand awareness, brand recall, whether you're likely to purchase, some of the attitudinal stuff to make sure, as a Cooper always scored very high as a trusted brand and a premium brand. So, make sure you're not slipping back in that. I mean, it's very important on the official research that we did sort of every year that it was statistically valid and high probability scores, so, lower margins of error. So we could actually use that information when we talk to the tyre retailer network internally or other sort of suppliers, for example, like Cooper, the manufacturer in America as well, when we'd have to update them on what was going on in America. So, I mean, this research sort of helped back everything up and was, statistically valid as well, so very hard to argue against.
Yeah. Are you in a position where you can use sales data as part of your KPIs as well, or is that a little bit harder with that kind of arm's length to the customer?
Yeah, definitely a lot harder. So, we had to put strategies in place just to get end user consumer information as well. So we sort of had to incentivize someone to jump on the Cooper website and give us their information and tell us what it was they actually purchased.
Yeah.
Because, essentially we were selling to the retailer. The retailer had the customer or the end user information, and some of them are good at using it, some of them aren't. And we obviously wanted to own that information, use that information, and resell back to those end users as well. And, in line with the retailer and support the retailer. It was one less activity that they had to do with their business as well. So
yeah,
one of the extras that we were able to offer.
Were some of your campaigns therefore targeting retailers? Yeah,
definitely. But I mean, as a wholesaler, one of the things that has changed probably is 10 years ago when I started, about 60% of the budget was towards the consumer and 40% towards the retailer.
Yep.
Which is now it's probably switched around, 40% towards the end user and 60% towards the retailer.
Right.
Part of that is how many more retailers we have now. Another part is the shift away from independent retail stores, so just the ma and pas that don't belong to a group like a Tyre Power or a Jax or a Goodyear Auto Care. We're coming a lot more channel exclusive, and I mean incentivizing rebates. Another thing we never did with Cooper or Mickey Thompson was sort of play in this 4 for 3 promotional activity that happens in the tyre market.
Yeah.
We were committed to building these brands and having a consumer walk in and pay full price for them. And invested in training and how the manager of a retailer store, all their sales staff could sell on features and benefits as opposed to the lowest price.
Yeah, interesting. Did you find that the emotional side of things was useful in marketing to retailers as well as to the end consumer, or was that a differentiation? Yeah,
no, definitely. And we had sort of some big cooperative budgets for retailers. We wanted to create ads and have the retailer pick those ads up and play them in their local areas.
Yep.
Or put an ad in a paper or whatever their advertising strategy was. We wanted to align with that, but promote our brands. And they were more interested in the emotional ads, which show those feel good moments of being saved on the side of the road when you've got a puncture or being able to make it up a big hill and everyone cheering you on, and all those feel good things.
Yeah.
And they would buy in a lot more to the emotional advertising than what they would with the rational stuff. And partly that was because the retailers, they were having other brands, other manufacturers come to them and go, well, here's some research. We feel we're just as good, if not better. Here's a brake test. Here's a wet brake test. Here's a speed test, and et cetera, et cetera. So people were able to go out and manipulate things around that sort of rational side anyway.
Yeah.
So that's where the emotional stuff become a lot stronger. It just helps your message cut through in the marketplace as well.
Yeah, interesting. If someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I really have not spent enough time focusing on the emotional side of things, what next steps would you recommend they should take?
I guess jump on the old Google and just search emotional versus rational marketing. There's some really good material out there. If there are senior marketers or mentors that they follow, they'll be able to find sort of information out there as well. There's also a book called How Brands Grow, which is really, really good. And they actually in that book talk a lot about how the world is moving, or the future will be more emotional advertising than rational advertising. So that's interesting and sort of backs some things up as well.
Okay, great. We'll include a link to that as well. Well, thanks so much, Andrew, for coming and sharing this knowledge with us today. There's been some great tips there, and it's great to shine some light on this important topic as well for marketers. How can people get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Well, I guess, just email me, andrew.collings@zohomail.com.au, or just do a search for Andrew Collings, Collings, and find me on LinkedIn. And feel free to send me a message if you want to know more information or have a deeper chat about this.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today.
No worries. Thank you, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, and I'd love it if you can leave us a review. My recommended action item from today's show is to brush up on your skills on rational and emotional messaging and make sure you have the right balance for your audience. Please join me in the Interactive Minds Facebook group, where hundreds of marketers have discussions, answer questions, and I share the latest news I'm seeing in the industry. You can access today's show notes at interactiveminds.com/podcast. See you next week.